Welcome, everyone, to today's fireside chat on SRE versus everyone. Who actually owns observability? I'm Jesse, Chief Technologist here at DZone, and I'll be the host for the chat. We're still living in the long tail of the DevOps movement. Most companies today say they're doing DevOps, and developers are indeed shipping and supporting their own code. But the reality is, many of the foundational walls between dev and ops still exist. Observability remains one of the last of those walls, and SREs often bear the brunt of it. That's why I'm thrilled to be joined today by Paige Cruz, Principal Developer Advocate at Chronosphere, and an all-around awesome person. She's here to help us rethink who actually owns observability and how SREs can shift from reactive responders to strategic enablers. Welcome, Paige.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm so excited to be here with you, having this conversation and sharing my thoughts. This topic is very near and dear to my heart. I have lived the reality working for vendors. I have been the observability practitioner as the customer of those vendors. I've kind of seen observability from all sides, of course, now as an advocate in marketing.
Awesome. Well, so glad you're here. We got a lot of things to get through, so we'll get after it. Let's kick things off by talking about where we are now. So kind of think industry level, where are we? Like I really liked the abstract that you wrote for this one, right? Talking about this quote wall of confusion. And sometimes observability is this handoff and should be a handshake instead. Can you unpack that a little bit? I mean, what does the metaphors mean, and like reflect on the current state of observability overall?
Yeah, absolutely. So the wall of confusion, I have to credit to hearing a lot at DevOps Days conferences when I was coming up. I borrowed it from a couple of folks. I believe Lee and Andrew Clay Schaefer introduced the term to our industry. And what I love about it, it's so evocative. I heavily rely on metaphors in this space. And so as I interpreted the wall of confusion, it really describes that situation where we're all working on the same system. SRE teams are providing infrastructure. Applications run on that infrastructure. We need to deploy code to update those applications. We have to deliver value to customers. But our workflows, that wall of confusion, comes when, even though we're working on the same system, we have siloed knowledge, or we're handing things over a wall. It was tossing it over the wall.
Kicking it, throwing it over the wall. Yeah, I got you.
The chucking it over the wall. And that wall of confusion is when folks on either side of that wall don't understand each other. They have misaligned incentives. Maybe there's not that open communication. Maybe there's that expectation. You do my deployments, or you set up monitors, or your job is just writing code. It's sort of not being able to, seeing past each other, not having the same conversation.
I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, to me, I was confused a little about the wall of confusion, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, we're so used to throwing things over the wall, and if we're not, I think the thing that you got to that I really like is we got to act more as a team, right? If we're passing things off and hitting it across, we're not doing that.
Absolutely. And I early on was lucky I did a brief stint in software engineering, and I quickly followed my interest and passion to infrastructure, SRE, release engineering. And so I early on got a little taste of both worlds, and I can empathize with both sides. But I think if you've spent your whole career as a developer, or your whole career as an operator, or as an SRE, sometimes you don't have that same empathy because it is not something you've directly experienced. So it does take a little effort and intention and conversations to break down that wall. So the good news is, when I was coming up in 2016, the wall of confusion had broken down in a few key areas. It was expected. It was normal that developers were on call for their code. I can't imagine a time, of course, it's so sensible to me today. So that was expected, as well as developers being responsible for deploying, not necessarily setting up, configuring, managing the CI/CD pipelines themselves, but I wrote this code, I am pushing the button, I am taking accountability for what happens after this. That's great. As you mentioned in the intro, the problem is that wall of confusion wasn't totally torn down. And in this haste if I was an operator back then, I would have been so excited to chuck that pager over the wall. I would have been so excited to say, welcome to the realities of production.
Take it.
And what I kind of see as the residual effects of putting developers on call, moving from that more siloed view of who
Mhm.
does what, is you had a concentration of experience and expertise on the ops side when it comes to monitoring, observability. How do I create data that's useful? How do I shape it? How do I analyze it? How do I
Mm.
tune alerts? Alerts
Yeah.
aren't set it and forget it. I wish they were. Um, and so you can't just giving somebody the pager doesn't transfer decades of experience and the nuances of PromQL and that sort of thing. And so I think
Mm.
today we're in this world where, yeah, you build it, you run it. What about you build it, you run it, observe it? Like, why was observability and monitoring not a part of running it? That, I think,
Yeah.
we're in this area where we need to transfer and share the knowledge, skills, expertise. We need to provide better paths for developers to shore
Mhm.
up observability and monitoring. And we need to support them. It is not something they can do on the side. They can do after hours. They shouldn't be buying books on their own. Dear God, you as a company have a vested interest in making sure everybody's fluent in
Yes.
observability.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
you're
yeah.
right. It's a huge issue. I mean, I love this idea of shared responsibility. When you pass the pager, you don't pass the knowledge. I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have to work together. But, I know from some of our earlier conversations, right, that it's not just a tooling issue. It's not a pager issue. It's not pager duty or status cake or whatever. It's so much more than that. It's cultural, right? There's
Always.
this
Always.
muscle memory in teams, right? That they throw it over, they're expected to respond, they need help because they're going to call somebody else anyway, or they're going to fumble with it all night and be worthless the next day. So,
Yeah.
why do you think that it's still such a big problem? Even when people say, "Hey, I've adopted DevOps," but they really kind of haven't. Like, what do you do there?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I think about this all of the time. The why, the people. Yeah. So breaking it down, like, why does the silos persist? I can tell you from my time, a lot of it was down to the incentives, where
Mm.
development teams were incentivized to build, to be providing new features, to be delivering net new value. And that sort of continuous like operations and maintenance and managing the system we have sort of fell on the ops side. And
Yeah.
so, because that knowledge is centralized on the ops SRE platform team, I kind of use them interchangeably because we as an
Yeah.
industry really struggle to have one job title
We
mean
can't do
one
that.
thing.
We can't do that.
um, and so when you're under time pressures, when you're under budgetary pressures, when you're under these sort of external factors or pressures from the business, what is very appealing is, what's the quickest way to get this work done? The
Mm.
quickest way is to go to the team that already knows how to do this and have them migrate to the new vendor. Why don't you do all the dashboards? Or, hey, it's time to roll out SLOs. It's more than just providing a template. Teams also kind of expect that sort of out of the box experience and sort of. Let me rewind. It's just, we go with what we know. And so if
Yeah.
what you know is you can trust the SRE team to wrap up a monitoring initiative right away, and you trust their work, and it's not going to be a lot of time for them to on-ramp or learn, that's quite appealing under the face of these pressures. Not to me, but to leaders.
To the business, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the business wants. Faster time to market,
Exactly.
more, I'll use another phrase, hands-on keyboards,
Hands-on
right?
keyboards.
They want developers to have hands-on keyboards, building new things. I get it. But
Yep.
I think the whole reason we're here is to discuss that it's a problem.
It's not working. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's not
it's
working.
not what I've learned, because on the ops side, I'm still very much biased towards empathizing with the ops side first and foremost, is that this was not the state of observability today. The knowledge silos, the overwhelming amount of data, most of which is not useful for you and your team. The messiness that you feel and the tension and the million paper cuts sometimes that it takes to
Mm.
increase observability in your system. The barriers aren't intentionally there. No one is maliciously standing there
No.
like, I don't want you to I want you to solve problems slower. Like, no, this is all a byproduct of like shifting our architectures, from, oh my God, I would have loved to do a 3-tier web app architecture. Are you kidding me? I would have loved a monolith. I came into the world of cloud clusters and containers where you just, if you do not have a strategy to manage and shape your data to make sure you only keep what matters to you, you fall into a data problem. It's not something that it is a byproduct of shifting to our architectures. What worked in on-prem, maybe not having a telemetry strategy was fine when there wasn't that much data and it didn't cost us that much, but it does not work for the typical cloud native shop today. And so it is sort of like this, that helped me empathize more. Like, nobody is creating this and nobody wants to perpetuate a frustrating observability experience. This is the reality of it. So when you know that you're up against that it's not, there's nobody against you. We all can work together, right? Like that helps you open up a lot more conversations, I think.
Yeah. And from an empathetic standpoint, I know, from the developer side, I have a son who's a developer now. I see it. And we'll talk about this. Yeah. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Not how old my 20-something-year-old son is, because I feel old, but because there's real pain. There's a real human element to this that I want to talk about, as we're switching gears. But sometimes it's not that there's maliciousness, like you just said. I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm doing it to protect myself because I'm overwhelmed. I'm burnt out. These outages are killing me. I've been up at 3 a.m. the last 3 nights and trying to work an 8 to 5 day. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Let's go a little bit deeper. Siloed practices went to the point where they caused real pain, right? Whether it's these burnouts or even just general inefficiencies, we might not be doing it maliciously, but we're still doing it. So let's tackle that.
Oh, totally. For me, I think most organizations really feel that pain of the silos and just the inefficiencies it cause when it's time to migrate. Whether you're doing a tool consolidation, maybe you've got, every vendor has their state of observability reports. The thing that jumps out to me is that bucket of the bulk of organizations that have like 3 to 10 observability tools. 3 is not so bad, but like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, scattered data, access issues. Do I even have access to go to the logs that team has shipping to there's been times where I've discovered an elk cluster that was like new to me because I needed one specific access log that I couldn't find in the vendor. And you
man.
No wonder
we can't find anything.
People see observability as a chore, see it as this like very frustrating thing. So like tactically, like a good example of how this migration exposes the blurry ownership and the silos is, I can think of one company. I was on a 2-person DevOps / SRE team, which always I have regretted every role I've taken that has shoved DevOps in the title. And I get it. I hear from recruiting, that's how we get people in the door. We can't just put sysadmin anymore. I wish we could go back to sysadmin. It's descriptive, but
and
So we had been without a direct manager for months. This also is not super uncommon. I think it is a little hard to hire like ops leadership. At least it was at the time.
Yeah.
And we were signed up. We did not get a say into this. We were signed up to migrate all of our metrics and the associated artifacts. So that's your monitors, that's your dashboard and charts, any like saved queries, anything that was metrics based, which in monitoring is a lot.
It's almost everything. Yeah.
It's the foundation, and metrics are the foundation. Like,
for sure.
So 2 people, and of course, SRE, DevOps, platform teams, you're always vastly outnumbered, the teammates you have to the amount of developers you have to support, which is why the one-on-one, the manual work, it does not scale. You can get by in a small org, but it is not a lasting strategy. So that is an important thing, I think, for developers and leaders to empathize on the ops side. We are often underfunded, maybe I would say overworked. And we don't get a product unless you're at like a Google. You don't get a project manager or program manager. You don't get some of those those niceties that help you have a structured team that can be organized.
Yeah.
You as an operator, I was like, oh, I'm doing internal DevRel. I'm doing a little bit of the security over here. I'm having to manage up, sideways, up, down. Like,
Yeah. It's
if
a
you
lot.
like that kind of work, go to ops. You will not get bored.
Shameless plug for all of you out there looking for a job.
Yeah. So two people, we got to migrate all these metrics. How much time did we have? Not enough. Always these observability migrations are, I'm running out the clock on my contract. So I have a literal like hard deadline, and you don't want to go month to month with an observability vendor. Like that is not, those costs go up just like they do if you're renting month to month versus the year.
Yeah.
So incredible time pressure. When it comes to metrics, accuracy, precision, incredibly important. No two tools will necessarily have alerts the same way. So you want to make sure you have enough confidence in the new alerts. You want to dual report, you want to check, like, we had to cram a lot of this work in. And what would have been great is if the development teams were able to take ownership over their artifacts. Like the thing that it's so silly, like there's a lot of cool work we did. The silliest thing that like ground my gears was coming to migrate dashboards. Dashboards are notorious. Like I think they're the biggest source of monitoring debt. So easy to create. For whatever reason, we just let them stick around. People leave the org and you still got Bob's MySQL dashboard from 2005. Like, come on. Like we could let that one go. No one's looked at it. But so that's the thing. Like today, accept the fact you have monitoring debt. And unless you have teams that are taking on ownership of the data their services emit, the monitors that leverage that data, and the dashboards or queries or notebooks or however you would like to explore your observability data associated with that service, unless teams are constantly gardening and keeping their room clean, you will have accumulated a lot of stuff that is not important, not delivering value, not worth migrating. And my team had to sift through all of this because we didn't have a practice of development teams being good stewards of their telemetry. We're sitting there as a 2-person team that already has a lot of work to do. Is this dashboard important? This chart didn't correctly translate, or there's not an equivalent chart from vendor A to vendor B. Is it really important? Do we need the workaround? What do we do? We should not have been making those decisions. They were not our charts. They were not our dashboards. I'm fine that SRE takes responsibility for the infrastructure side of the house. I would not want a developer migrating Kubernetes related telemetry. That's not their lane, right? But when it came to the point where I had to pull information from teams and say, is this important? Is this important? 10 out of the 20 dashboards you had couldn't move. Are you really using them? Is it worth it? Like, not a good use of my time, not a good use of my teammates' time.
No.
And that's the kind of thing, that little paper cut where you're like, technically it's faster if I run through everything, I give you a report of what move and can't move, but I would have loved if you had just come to me and said, here's the 5 things I absolutely need. Here are the nice to haves, cut the rest. That would have been way more effective.
Yeah. And that, it brings us to part of the biggest reason we're here today, right? And as I think through that, I'm thinking through, you're going through these dashboards, business owners, stakeholders. There's probably 30 people that needed to make those decisions, but we don't want to lose anything. Don't take any of my stuff away, whether I use it or not, right?
There's a
I
lot
call
of
those
fear.
data hoarders. It's like the people who don't clean their attic out.
Yes.
Anyway, but really what we're getting at is who owns or who should own observability. Is it a team? Is it a function? Is it a set of skills that somebody needs, right? Or is it something else entirely? And this is where, we think a little bit about, catchphrases over the last year or two, shift left. How far do we shift left? Why do we shift it? Is it right to do that? So kind of, how do you want to address the whole issue of who really should own it and why?
Yeah. And I think that question was provocative because, of course, it is not one team or one person. I liken it a lot to security. Yes, you have a security team. Yes, their job is to make sure that your organization can have secure development practices to protect your customer data. they are not the only ones responsible for having a secure system, right?
Yes, that's it.
You could have a great security team, but you could have one rogue developer that goes off and writes some really insecure code. Was that the security team's fault? Is that even the right question? No. So when I think about observability, like, yes, there are like skills and knowledge, of course. But when it comes to sharing that responsibility, if you wanted to draw some clear lines, I think the team that manages infrastructure, the team that writes applications, teams, you need to be responsible for your domain. And because services are interconnected, services run on servers and containers, we need to be able to share our data together in a way that makes sense. So a default Kubernetes dashboard maybe not be super readable to someone that's an app dev because you just moved to Kubernetes and they don't know what a pod is. But if you had just labeled it service restarts instead of pod crash loop back off, that one terminology phrase now helps somebody understand your data about the system as it applies to their domain. To me, that's where we really need to share that responsibility, because you don't just own a tiny part of the system and you have these walls up and nobody else can affect you. No, infrastructure can affect applications, apps affect infrastructure.
Everything.
Yeah, and maybe you have a great day and you've got a burst of requests. Like, every part of the system, the people and the components need to be working together. And so observability's got to be this joint effort.
Yeah, and I love that, because you just said something that kind of, gave me an idea. We talk about your data, my data.
Yeah.
We got to stop that. That's not my team's data. That's the data, the app data, or the state of the application, or the company's data, or the team's data, or the department's data. I think we get to that critical flow in our brains where we're thinking mine, which is what builds the walls in the first place. Am I right?
Yes. My first job doing development, I was on my second team. We were writing some services for tracing to support tracing when it was new and shiny, like a million years ago. And we did a game day, and like I was like really excited. I was getting really comfortable with like understanding like how to monitor Kotlin. And I go, there's a row of panels that talk about the container and the hardware that we're running on. You know, what if I see something weird there? So I went to our infra team and I said, hey, like I want to make sure I can interpret these metrics. I want to make sure if something goes wrong with the service and it happens to be due to an infrastructure issue, I want to be knowledgeable enough to understand that data and be able to bring that info to you. Yeah, and they said, oh, don't worry about it. That's our lane. Like, if something goes wrong with the infra, that's what we're here for. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be like, I definitely want you to fix it, but like, I should be fluent enough to be able to read to rule out a code or config issue, something that's within my ability to affect or mitigate. And so that was that first time I kind of ran into that wall of like, oh, but my app runs on your hardware. So why we both need a view. We both need a view into this system. So that's like the very first point where I was like, oh, I guess I want to go do the infra stuff because I'm very interested in making sure the infrastructure is solid.
Yeah. And, I liken that to being on a pirate ship. We're on a pirate ship together, right? We need to turn left. Nobody's at the wheel. I can see that nobody's at the wheel, but I deal with the sails. I still should be able to say, hey, nobody's at the wheel. We need to turn. It's that thing. We get so myopic with the things that we want to own or monitor, all that stuff. Yeah. But I want to take a break. I want to do something more, a little fun, because we got to break these things up. You've worked in everywhere, right? SRE, dev advocacy, platform engineering. What particular on-call moment, this is for all our on-call peeps out there, lives rent-free in your brain?
I mean, many. I feel like it doesn't take that long on call to fill up a bunch of stories.
No. And somebody's out there watching this laughing and typing to a friend. Do you remember when? Do that. Yeah.
So the standout one to me, so I experienced burnout. The last SRE position I held, there's a culmination over a couple companies, over a couple years. COVID was
Yeah.
rough for everybody.
Yeah.
But I burned out to the point where I needed to reevaluate my job. And that
Mm.
is the part of burnout that a lot of people don't talk about. Sometimes
Yeah.
the answer to move forward is changing your role permanently. And so for me, I am permanently off call. I am not an SRE hands on keyboard anymore.
Yeah.
And so I envisioned my retirement, right? Like full nights of sleep,
Oh,
uninterrupted weekends, a dinner where I'm not worried about a migration. And for several weeks, that was the case. I had this I started my radical sabbatical. I was building a the Lego Land Rover, very fun.
yes.
And I'm going to bed, trying to doze off, and I'm woken up by pager duty, that familiar ringtone, which, if you've been on call for any amount of time, you have a
Hmm.
Pavlovian response. Your body reacts before your
Yeah.
mind even understands what's happening. So I'm like, whoa, what's going on? What do I like? Who do I need to talk to? Where's my
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
laptop? Let me go get the robe, all of that stuff. And then I turned over and it wasn't my page at all. It was my partner's. And I thought, I get to just roll over and go back to sleep. And I was like, I feel bad for you. Like, it's not that I don't feel bad
Yeah.
for him, but I was like, not my system. Good
Yeah.
luck, buddy. I'll make you some coffee. And that's when I was like, oh, I haven't escaped the pager. Anybody that has an
Mm.
on-call, whether it's a doctor, whether it's an engineer in the house, the families,
Yeah.
the partners, and the children, we are not immune to the effects of on-call. And that's when I realized the pager was not done with me.
Yeah, I had a moment because we used PagerDuty, status cake, all that stuff, and that is what my brain was doing as you were talking. Was I heard the ring. Not going to say it, trigger anybody, but I heard the
Yeah.
ring, and you're right. Your body reacts. It's a
Yeah.
real thing, and my wife and my kids, they know what that sound is.
They know. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's real. So I love that we're talking about that and trying to figure out how to make it an our shared thing culturally, right?
Yes.
So I wanna talk now. That was fun. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about what it actually looks like to share that ownership. Like
Yeah.
we hear a lot of stuff about it, especially around, like you said, testing, security, and that stuff. But what does it really look like? Like what gets in the way of us doing this? How can we help the people out here in internet land watching this thing? How can we help them move forward? And what kind of changes should we look at, both operationally or culturally, to make this thing happen?
Yeah. Oh, this is such a great and important question. And I think flippantly, you hear people say, it's about having a conversation, talk to people, like, oh God, we hate talking to people in tech. And it's like, okay, you don't just like walk up to, some people who are quite gregarious are comfortable walking up to random strangers and kicking off a conversation. But the reality is, if you're working in these silos and that has been the culture and like how your organization and all the other organizations you've worked at operates,
Mm-hmm.
it feels kind of weird to just walk up to another team and be like, hey, what do you do? How do you do it? What's up? Like, that's not natural for everybody,
No.
and especially some of us techies. So,
Because we're weird and awkward. Yes, we can say it.
So, something that really came into focus when I was giving a presentation at an organization on this very topic is a developer said, well, yeah, the shifting left stuff, I can't be an expert in everything. So, like, something's got to give. And I said, you're right. I have fallen into that trap of thinking observability is a fascinating domain for everybody else. Like, it's basically a small group of observability nerds that want to talk about monotonic counters and stuff. So, like, point taken. I think when we talk about shifting left, when we talk about how do we actually work together, the SRE monitoring, infra ops, DevOps platform, whatever you call it, that side is really can be effective when they determine what just enough knowledge and skills are for their organization, for their size, for their stack, for the other initiatives that are competing for developers' time and attention. It's not about chucking all of the responsibility back on developers and saying, don't talk to me, set up your own alerts. It's not like that's not shifting left.
No.
So what is just enough? Like, one example I give is, say you're migrating to a new vendor. Most vendors have pretty good documentation. It's not that they don't have good documentation. The Problem is, they've got sprawling platforms, lots of features, plenty of things your org doesn't want to pay for, is not interested in, or is something they're bookmarking to explore later. And just throwing the docs at somebody, saying, okay, here's how you can set up, here's how you can create metrics, and here's how you add a tag to them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of context missing from the vendor's docs that only you, your team, or somebody working in your org can provide. Like, do we have team name? Do we have on-call rotation name as tags? What are the expected tags? What are the casing for those tags? What are the rules around that? And so there's a lot of value in the folks that know monitoring and observability really well, figuring out what that glue, that documentation, the really comprehensive example. So not, I'm going to do your work for you, but here is a production ready example that you can use as a template, you can use as a guide. We respond very well as developers to like a really good, strong example, not that 101 stuff, not hello world. Give me something that I can learn from. That I found to be like very effective in sharing that knowledge.
Awesome. What about on the culture side? You know I'm going to go back to that.
Yeah. So I really think it takes all layers, from individual contributors, from our devs and our ops, security folks, data scientists. It takes them through middle management, through executives, to be on board with the idea that SRE is not your monitoring butlers. Like, unless observability and monitoring are seen as a core, typical part of a development workflow, in the same way that being on call and deploying your own code is a part of it, everyday software practices, so does, if you're building something new, you're not shipping it with a hope and a prayer. You've thought, how will I know if it's working? How will I know if it's not working? Do I have the data to answer those questions? And if not, I will go make sure that I instrument to create the data so that I can be a good citizen in this distributed system.
Yeah, and we need a whole nother talk on instrumentation. But I do want to keep us on track. Like, within that process, where do people get stuck? Where do they get stuck? They're going to try to implement some of these things. What do they need to look out for?
Spending too much time. There's a lot of focus that gets put into the instrumentation, creating the data, and then shaping, what am I dropping? What am I rolling up? Where are all the places I need to route this data? So much engineering time and focus and SRE time and focus goes into that. But you do not realize the benefits of observability until you have a human interacting with that data, analyzing it, interpreting it, sharing it. Hey, did you know latency on this API endpoint shot up in the last 3 weeks? Why did none of our alarms go off? Like, the value of observability is the humans in the loop. And so just spending your time on, can we create the data and can we ship it somewhere? There's no wonder most orgs are out of whack with the ROI for the cost to value of their telemetry, because they're not focusing on, how are we supporting the humans? Are people looking at this data? Are they using it? Are only 2 people logging in to ever look at traces? Why are we paying for it? Traces are valuable, and the problem is you should work on the adoption and enablement piece. That's what it comes down to. Spend more time on adoption and enablement. Make sure the humans are confident on call, that they can investigate. If they have a question, they know where to go and how to answer it. That's pouring your time into that will pay off dividends.
Yeah, and it's a big job. It's a really big job. I want to talk about internal platforms. And so let's kind of shift gears there real quick. Platform teams are super important, right? But we've already talked a little bit about dashboards and all that kind of stuff. But how do platform teams fit into all this while we're trying to make this thing work, as a group, as a shared thing?
Platform teams, I do love I don't know your opinion on it, like, is platform just a rebrand for like internal tools teams or what? But like, what I appreciate when we call it a platform, it feels like you're elevating it from a little CLI that a team maintains, or a little wrapper script. Like, no, a platform is a product, and we should be bringing product methodology into it. Where does platform fit? I think the one story that really struck me a couple KubeCons ago came from a talk from Ho Chun Wong at DoorDash, Service Mesh Journey, the good, the bad, the ugly. So he talked about this. There's big incident that necessitated the need to move to get better networking, some benefits, and service mesh was a good solution for their problems. Talks a lot. There's a lot of interesting technical details, but that's not the thing that I took away. What I took away was they had onboarded a few teams. They'd done that initial, hey, we're going to have a small group test out. They're going to get this Envoy sidecar. The platform team was responsible, obviously, for like initial config, default alerts, default dashboards. And after that initial exploratory period, his team paused to ask a very important question. What would hold us back from moving faster when we're rolling this out to the rest of the org? What changes do we need to make from the initial system we set up in order to move fast and get this out there and scale?
Nice.
And he said, I have a quote because this is how much I love this talk. The metrics we provided were overwhelming. There were too many, and it was hard for our users to know what metrics to look at. We directly exposed all the terminology, all the default terminology used on Envoy metrics to our users. They had to learn stuff like ingress, egress, upstream, downstream, local and remote connections, requests, responses, messages, gRPC, stuff like that. Not all engineers enjoyed looking into every single detail of all of that data. So we invested time into simplifying the dashboard to make our metrics user-friendly and surface only the important high-level metrics.
Keep it simple, yeah.
Love it. That is the power of a platform team.
Love it.
More than here's a dashboard. Is this helpful? Is this useful? Is there a long support burden for my platform team because you can't use the data we provided to answer your initial questions? Like, that's the power, is making this data usable, user-friendly. Yeah. No more default names, please. I think I saved one. http://downstream/cx destroy local active RQ. What?
You're killing me, Smalls.
Like, you're killing me. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No.
That's the power of a platform team, is really making telemetry data accessible so that developers can explore, learn, build a better understanding of their system. It's not good enough to just take something off the shelf. It's just not.
Listen, the only thing that name's good for is an old C++ variable name that's shared globally that should be removed. All right. So last thing. Right. We're going to wrap this thing up, but I do want to talk a little bit about the future, right? Yes. The future of observability. Oh yeah. This is a contemplative moment.
Gazing into the crystal ball.
The crystal ball of the future. I love this thing. AI is on everybody's radar. We're using it every day to, cook meals and plan vacations, whatever. How do you see it intersecting with observability kind of over the next year?
And I will say, I am that person who has been very fatigued by the AI washing. I have been so fatigued by the bad actors in the space that it is. I now am finally opening my mind to like, oh yeah, there are valid and helpful, useful applications of this. So I think what I'm hoping in the next couple years is that we can really sift out and really get clear as an industry, as users, when and where it's appropriate to embed and integrate AI within observability workflows for users. I think on the vendor side, instrumenting, there's quite interesting, it's a quite interesting nut to crack of how do we actually observe these models? How do we observe the LLMs? How do we observe model drift with ML? Like, there's monitoring and observability has to keep pace with innovation. So I think there's a lot of technical, interesting mysteries that will be unraveling in the next couple years. But I guess if I was going to be biased, I prefer machine learning. It feels like something I can wrap my arms around a little more. And it also powers my second favorite feature in Chronosphere, the telemetry usage analyzer.
Oh, so come on. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Power it up.
The plug. No, but truly, why I loved it is I sat down with the PM. I said, look, I'm getting all these questions about AI, when and where we use it. I'm not under the impression that we've like liberally sprinkled it everywhere. I said, so talk to me about telemetry usage analyzer. We make recommendations and we help you sort whether data is utilized, whether it's in use in alerts and dashboards, whether somebody's queried for it, that sort of thing, and the volume of it, both on metrics and the metadata like labels. I said, but that's not AI. She said, no, comma, there are machine learning algorithms that are running to make the recommendations. And I said, you mean we have ML in our product and we didn't lead with that in the marketing? Like, that I would like to see more of. Talk about the value. Talk about this great feature.
Yeah.
If it happens to use AI and ML, great, but that should not be what you're leading with. Like, so that's why it's my favorite. It was a secret AI.
That's awesome. I love that. Because we got to figure out how to use it. I agree. Yep. Bad actors are everywhere. They're using it up one side and down the other. And so we need to figure out how to combat that. Last question before we wrap. Okay. I really want to know, as people are getting started down this new journey that we have told them to embark on, what's your advice kind of on where they should focus first?
I think you have to start small, and you have to start in your own backyard. Your team, whether it's infrastructure that you provide or it's applications that you're delivering, you have some surface area of telemetry, of monitors, of dashboards. It would be a great idea to do some spring cleaning. Keep 3 buckets. Keep, tune, tweak, delete. And use your on-call shifts to start doing that sort of audit. When you have a clean house, from there we can start to have really good conversations about what to monitor, where is this the right that signal, but clean up the clutter. It's an easy place to start, and it will help the future migrations, whether you're re-instrumenting with OTel or consolidating vendors or whatever. If your team's room is clean, you're not going to have that much work, and the SREs will love you. You will be their favorite team.
Well,
and that's how you can make friends.
There you go. Make friends with the teams, the SREs. Keep your data clean, no hoarding. You heard it here first. And that's a wrap. Paige, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It was super fun. Thanks for sharing your experiences, your insights, your expertise. Can't wait till we get to do this again. And thank you to all of you out there for tuning in. And a special thank you to Chronosphere for sponsoring this talk and making it all possible. If you enjoyed our talk and you want to see more on-demand content just like this, head on over to dzone.com/events, where you can access, share, and watch all of our content. That's it for today. We will see you next time.